You're a blessed young man. Good morning. It is so good to see all of you. I am so thankful to be able to be here. And at this time, I invite your kind attention to the 10th chapter of the book of Exodus as we look at the ninth plague in our journey along this road of deliverance for the children of Israel. And we are coming upon, I don't believe that today, particularly considering the lateness of the time that we're starting this morning, we're starting probably a good 5 or so minutes later than we generally do. And I don't think I'm going to get as far into the lesson today. I'll find an appropriate place to cut off in my notes. I had rather really thought that perhaps we could even do this entire one today, but we'll wait and finish it next Sunday. And then coming up on the 10th plague, probably of all the scenes that unfold before us in the Old Testament, this is probably the 10th plague. Of course, that being the plague of the death angel, whereby the miracle of what we've come to know as the Passover, God's deliverance from the death angel. That particular plague probably speaks most pointedly to Calvary of anything to be found in all of the Old Testament. Each of these plagues, of course, we understand, speaks of deliverance and speaks of God's protection of His own and also His unmitigated wrath against sin. If you would, begin with me in the 21st verse of chapter 10 of Exodus. The Lord said unto Moses, stretch out thine hand toward heaven, that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, even darkness which may be felt. And Moses stretched forth his hand toward heaven. There was a thick darkness in all the land of Egypt 3 days. Excuse me. They saw not one another. Neither rose any from his place for 3 days. But all the children of Israel had light in their dwellings. And Pharaoh called unto Moses and said, go ye, serve the Lord. Only let your flocks and your herds be stayed. Let your little ones also go with you. And Moses said, thou must give also sacrifices and burnt offerings, that we may sacrifice unto the Lord our God. Our cattle also shall go with us. There shall not an hoof be left behind, for thereof must we take to serve the Lord our God. And we know not with what we must serve the Lord until we come hither. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not let them go. And Pharaoh said unto him, get thee from me. Take heed to thyself. See my face no more. For in that day thou seest my face, thou shalt die. And Moses said, thou hast spoken well. I will see thy face again no more. Brothers and sisters, I have waited until rather the ending, coming up, this is the ninth, coming up upon the 10th of the plagues. And I have rather waited in the exposition of these verses dealing with the plagues to point out something very significant that I kind of think that probably it has occurred to some of you. and that really has been my hope in the way I've tried to present things, that you would have been drawn back even to the book of beginnings, Genesis. As we come and as we have come and as we have studied these events that have transpired in the lives of the Egyptians and the Hebrews, and we have seen how God has used in His power and might and majesty, how He has commanded the works of His hands in a way that would be considered as a plague rather than a blessing. Have you considered, or has it occurred to you, that what we have studied here is a taste, a sample, a foretaste, if you will, of decreation? Has it occurred to you that there is a real sense in which the things that God has created for good, He has now changed their use in these specific circumstances that He's brought into the lives of the Egyptians and the Hebrews as well in some circumstances? They weren't spared from all of the plagues. I do not believe that at the first that can be proven. But in specific, there are some that He says specifically they are spared from. But, brothers and sisters, in a very real sense, this is a sampling of decreation. Now, there is coming a time of decreation that will be a lasting effect as far as decreation goes of the order that we now know and understand. And we're going to be turning to 2 Peter a little later in the morning's worship and looking specifically how Peter describes that decreation. And of course, those of you who come on Sunday evenings and have gone through the Revelation study with us, we have gotten a real good taste and hopefully somewhat better understanding of what the Scriptures say will happen to this old world at the end of time. That is in very deed and a grand showing of decreation. It is not, however, a showing of annihilation. Whenever the Scriptures say that the elements will burn with fervent heat, we're going to be looking at that in a few moments, God willing. It is not meant to be understood that this creation, this world order, that this old world as we know it, is going to just be annihilated as in a ball of fire. Rather, it is a refining fire. It is a fire that is much like what we do with gold and silver, taking away the dross, all of the impurity, all which would defile, leaving behind dirt. Only that which is pure and good and holy and in the manner in which God has intended it to be. Brothers and sisters, as we have, come back with me to Genesis just a moment. Now, I don't want you to go to the obvious place at the very first, but rather this particular plague that we're looking at this morning being the plague of darkness, you would think that the place I was going to call your attention to would be that there be light. Would that not make sense since I've just spoken of decreation? We're not going to do that yet, but we are. But brothers and sisters, in Genesis 1, chapter 20, verse 26, God said, let us make man in our image. And I've explained to you before, that is one of the places that we go to in the Scriptures for our understanding of the triune God, the Spirit moving upon the face of the deep and so forth, and God spoke the eternal Word, and of course the Father being present. Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over what?
All.
The fish of the sea, and over all the fowl of the air, and over all the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have what?
Rule.
Dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. Do you see how in the phase that we have studied, this very dominion that God has given to man has been utterly removed from him? Was how much dominion did Pharaoh have over the gnats? None. How much dominion did he have over the flies?
None.
None. How much dominion did he have over the boils that came upon the cattle and upon all the living creatures?
Zilcho.
How much dominion did he have over the frogs that came up out of the Nile?
None at all.
None. And brothers and sisters, this very thing that God created for our good, for our use to his glory, God has said, wait, you have defamed and defiled my name. And we're fixing to look some more at that.
Man took dominion over man.
That very thing which is an affront to the holiness of God. And the Egyptians, brothers and sisters, we're going to see in just a moment, were about as guilty of this as you could possibly be found to be guilty, but don't be too hard on them. We might see a bit of ourselves in the mirror as well.
Mm-hmm.
Come back now to the beginning of the book of beginnings. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Verse 1 of chapter 1 of Genesis. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. Brothers and sisters, the glory of light, it is absolutely no accident or should come as no surprise either to any of us, the dominance in the order that the creation of light had in the 6 days of the creation week. Everything that we know or everything that occurs in our natural lives is dependent upon light. Those of you from an agrarian background, and even those of you that didn't grow up on a farm, you've grown daylilies, or you've grown zinnias, or you've grown grass.